Hey everybody, it's Audrey. This is the first semester that I've really tackled learning a foreign language, so I'm very excited to share with you my study routine for a spoken exam. If you would like more videos similar to this or want to see something very specific from me, you can leave it in the comments below. Let's go ahead and get started though. Alright everybody, so today is the day that I prepare for my Japanese oral midterm. The written midterm was last week. Thankfully, it was split into two parts. So I need to study for a conversation with my teacher that she is going to be playing a role, and I need to be able to answer some pretty specific questions. So what we have right here, it is a really old folder. I probably need to transition into a new one, but this is where I keep all of the handouts that I have been given in my Japanese class. Now, the reason why this is actually super helpful is at the beginning of the semester, our teacher handed us a survival phrases sheet. And there are some questions on it, or I should say some requests that we can say in Japanese, and we're supposed to use these in class, but there's also a lot that I'm going to be able to use in this conversation. So when I begin studying for my oral midterm, I'm going to review the questions that I think I'm going to need to ask her during the conversation, and I'm going to make sure that I'm comfortable with them and that I can tell the difference between please say it again and please read it, because they both end in kudasai, and I want to make sure that I'm not asking her to read something when I actually want her to repeat whatever it was that she just said. So that's the first step in studying for my oral midterm. I go over the phrases we've learned in class, and these are real basic phrases in Japanese that I can ask her to repeat something or speak more slowly, and those are things that you would say in a conversation. So I feel really comfortable using those in my midterm. Once I've reviewed the stuff that we've learned in class, I go to my notebook. Now, I decorated this composition notebook for my Japanese class. I used acrylic paint, some cardstock paper, and some cardboard. I don't know if you can tell, but that's shiny Sharpie that is kanji, and I haven't learned kanji yet, but I was able to copy this off online, so that was pretty easy. So I decorated a composition notebook to take all my notes in class, and last week we went over some vocab reviews because we're going to have to give her our class schedule, so I needed to remember the days of the week, the weekend, and this was for the written exam. As you can see, I had to do it quite a few times before I actually took the written exam for practice. But what I want to show you is this. After I had practiced my written portion, I took some notes for myself to remember, because I think that when you write something down, it's more likely to stick in your brain. So I wrote down things like, when I'm writing the character for 10, Ju, I need to make sure that I'm making the oo sound long, and that yon has an n at the end. It isn't just yo. But here I wrote down questions that I could ask her before we took the midterm. She is an awesome teacher and lets us ask as many questions as we need to, within reason, of course, to feel comfortable for our midterms. And I'm going to do this for my oral exam as well. I am going to practice with my brother. We're taking this class together, and then I'm going to write down my questions for her so that I make sure I'm not saying the wrong thing or conjugating the verbs in the wrong way. And I think this is super important when you're learning a foreign language. You need to be comfortable asking questions, because it's better to ask a ton of questions and say something correctly than to learn it the wrong way because you were either overconfident or you were too shy to talk to the teacher. So I take a ton of notes, write things down that I want to remember, and then I also write down questions that I want to ask my professor. And it's all in this notebook, so I keep my Japanese notes in one binder separate from all my other classes. Finally, she gave us a study guide, and it is in the order that the conversation will take place. It has a rubric for us to consider, and I wrote down some of the questions that she was going to be asking us, as well as some of the things we needed to remember to say, like a first-time introduction, as if we were meeting a language partner, not a teacher. So she's going to be playing a role, and we need to speak to her differently than we would an actual teacher. And then I wrote down the correct way to say some things that I wasn't sure about. I wrote down the questions she's going to ask us when she was willing to tell us what those questions are. And I'm going to fill up the rest of the spaces in this and practice with this piece of paper so that I feel really comfortable saying the things that I need to say on this oral midterm exam. So, my study routine. I am going to review the notes that she gave us in class, those survival phrases, so that I can make sure I am able to ask her to slow down or repeat things that I don't feel quite like I understood them. Then I review the notes that I took in class, and I am also going to write down the things I want to say, reminders for myself, and any questions I feel like I really need to ask her. And I think that's probably one of the most important steps, is that you are actually writing these things down, because you remember things way better when you're writing them down. Yes, this is an oral exam. I'm not going to be using any of my notes during the actual conversation with her, but if I write it down ahead of time, I am more likely to remember it in the long run. So that's how I study for a language midterm when I actually need to be speaking. I also use this when I am getting ready for any kind of presentation. I make sure to write everything down that I need to remember, review the notes ahead of time, have questions ready for the teacher so that I don't blank on those questions, and it really helped me on the written exam, so I suspect that it's going to really help me in the oral one as well. You guys can leave questions in the comments, or you can check out my website for any more tips like these.